Time is a conveyor belt that's coming at you. That's what time is, because time is the future coming at you, right? Here's what the future already contains. It contains bills, it contains problems, it contains
Yes.
heartaches, it contains like getting older, it contains illness, and ultimately it contains death. So, what we have the power to do in our lives is with our language, with our commitments, with our the structure of people around us who can help us with this, we can create putting things onto the conveyor belt. So it's like next spring we're going on a nice vacation to Europe. My daughter's wedding is coming up in September.
Ooh, I like
Like
this.
we're like I'm gonna like we're gonna have a really nice Christmas. We're gonna have a really nice birthday. We're talking like when the kids get a little older, like one more year, we're talking about getting a puppy. So that when the conveyor
Ooh,
belt comes at you, it's not just downers, it's
this
oh,
is life-changing for me. I'm sorry, this is amazing. Like that conveyor belt coming towards me, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying we can even take, I mean, I got chills from what you just said. I call them God chills, people. It's like it's just way you're gonna have to get used to me. So when that happens, it means that something was said that's really we want to take note of, I think. When I get that. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast Beyond. I'm Tammy Zagarelli, and this is my brother Mark Zagarelli. Hi, Mark. How are you?
hi Tammy, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. So, before I do that, is it saying very well or is it very good?
You can say either.
I'm
Perfectly
doing good.
grammatical both ways.
Okay, we're educational here as well. Okay,
Anytime.
so anyway, you had some things you wanted to talk about that sort of came from where we left off last time. And
Two.
we told at the end we told a story, we sort of told a story about mom that led into some things. And then I think I'm going to tell a little after you speak for a second, a little story about a few other people in the family, including dad. Go ahead.
That's great. Okay, so yeah, I thought the story that you told about mom, there were aspects of it that I didn't know. And I
Right.
could pick up from the parts that I did know, but I just didn't know the part where you said to her that love is a choice and it was able to land with her was a huge thing. And then you put the little slip of paper in her pocket that said choose love. I just thought that was really a big, um, a big milestone, a big marker. And what it sparked for me was I was thinking, so where does this conversation go? And one place I feel that it goes is towards abundance, that there is a way of perceiving this world and our lives in which we see with fresh eyes that there is this tremendous abundance that we would normally miss. And then as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, well, what is it that constitutes, like, what is it that makes one see that way? And the word that came to me was wisdom. And then I started thinking, okay, well, that kind of puts it all together for me that there is this um, readiness, which we were talking about.
Yes, we were
Ready,
definitely talking about
yeah,
readiness last week.
readiness creates this understanding that love is a choice. And when that happens, what opens up is an ability to see an abundance that is actually there, but that doesn't get seen very easily. And what is that? That's wisdom. And as I was thinking about wisdom, I wrote down, I was just thinking, well, wisdom versus intelligence. There's a lot of intelligent people in the world. There isn't quite as much wisdom, right? So I just wrote down a quick list. Your mileage may vary on any of these people, but I think this is a pretty good list of wise people from from like the century, and some of these people are still alive. I put down Oprah Winfrey, Eckhart
Absolutely.
Tolle, the Dalai Lama, all of those still with us, right? Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Ramana Maharshi, Albert Schweitzer, Mother Teresa, Elie Wiesel, and Viktor Frankl as a quick jot down of maybe 10, 11, 12 names of people who I think we're seeing the world through the eyes of wisdom from very different perspectives and very different life situations.
And I'm such a huge fan of Oprah. Like she's such a touchstone for me with the idea of, what are we doing here every day? And I love when someone has something that is a catchphrase. You know how I love my catchphrases. And when I think of her, she always says, "What I know for sure is dot dot dot." And but I f- and full stop before it sounds like I'm contradicting Oprah, which whom I love. But the idea that there's a weird thing about love being a choice because love is and isn't a choice. Really, the answer is love is. Full stop. And then we think, well, we have a choice between love, which is all more powerful than fear, right? We talk about, and then that presents this illusory choice that we have a choice between love and fear. And on this plane, we do dot, 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 think we do.
Right.
Fear is an illusion that causes actual physical pain and harm in this world. That's and all that duality of thought is almost too much to get into our heads. How could something imaginary,
Right.
fear is the imaginary belief that it has power, the imaginary belief in sustainable power. Is it true that fear can cause hatred and hard things in this world temporarily? On this earthly plane, it is very real. We can see the atrocities that have happened around us. That is real. And yet, the illusion in it is that love is not more powerful than it, right? When we look around the world, we see hatred all over the place and it looks very powerful. But in the like one moment of love can wipe out so much fear. And people say, well, then why isn't everybody doing that? It's because, as you say, you know, fear's got a better publicity agent.
Yes.
So we're lit, it's like one of my favorite sayings that you said was, March has got a better publicity agent, than October does, because people think, oh, October, it's getting cold, and October is one of the most beautiful months on the East Coast. That's where I am right now.
Right.
And you're in Malaysia, so that's not necessarily true. And March, which is the same amount of months away from the solstice, I think you said, was the
Right.
idea that March, we always think the budding of spring, and it
I was thinking
rains as,
April. I would always say April because it's that.
oh, April.
Because
Okay.
no, like people are like, April is the best month. It's like it's rainy, it's muddy, it's really not so good. My
It's
birthday
your
is
birthday.
April. It snows, it rains at least two-thirds of the time on my birthday, which is April 9th. It's like April has this amazing publicity agent, and October, not so much.
Right. But if you think about what real life in October, it's
Pretty
the
nice.
trees are turning on the East Coast. This is where I'm living right now. So I'm just talking about it from the New York point of view, is that, the trees are turning, the crisp smell in the air. You, we've had some days that are Indian summer. I never knew what that meant. And it's just after the first frost, we have a
Right,
day that goes up into like the 70s or something, and
right.
it's beautiful. So it's that fear has got, it's always speaking, it's always talking, it's like the rotation of the news cycle. You
Yeah,
don't hear any good news because what gets the attention,
that's right.
right? But so we have to keep choosing love, which was
Yeah.
what I was talking about with mom. Mom, we a little recap. Our mother was very, very, she struggled, and it was a really noble struggle. Really noble, because she struggled with what she wanted the most to have in life was faith. And she felt from her, she was Catholic, and she wasn't Catholic in a good way. Like she just, Catholicism is wonderful for many people, and it's, all religions are beautiful. Mom had a sense, she also had mental illness. We've
Yes.
talked about that. So she thought that faith was sort of bestowed on certain people, and then was sort of withheld from other people, which is so, in really ridiculous. But you can't tell someone who's struggling that something like that is ridiculous. She struggled and said, "Why, Tammy, do you have faith? It's not fair. And I don't have faith. And that's not fair." So that was a big deal to her. And so as we talked about the idea, as she got more ill, that love could be a choice, from becoming sort of starting to become ill, her guard dropped, and
Yes.
she was able to say, "Okay, just give me your point of view again." And the idea I had, and she agreed to. She said, "So love is a choice," and we wrote it down. As we said, we put it in her pocket, and I put it in her pocket and said, as you pointed out after the podcast, people's biggest fears are not that they'll ever have an inspiration or that they'll ever have motivation. That's not their fear, because when that's happening, it feels like it's going to last forever.
That's
But
right.
she knew herself well enough to know that her greatest fear and most people's greatest fear is the day after you've had this incredible insight. And all of a sudden you say to yourself, "What was that again? What was it again?" That's why I've trained myself, and I know you have, to write things down
Absolutely.
when you're feeling it. If I feel great right now, and if you look at it tomorrow and it's faded, you could look and say, uh, light and dark. Like I felt that bright and that light. Wow, I don't feel the way I'm walking around with the rain cloud just raining on me. That's that's the feeling. The fear is of that we, because we've experienced it so many times. Like you go. That's why motivation is a bad. It's it's great in the short run and bad in the long run.
Yes.
It's motivation is being pushed from behind by people or things buoying you up, and inspiration is sustainable.
Right.
Inspiration being pulled ahead by something that lights you up. And even sometimes that can something that can light you up, or something very practical. I keep a journal of how I feel every day, because I don't trust when this starts going. You never feel good, Tammy. You
Something
never feel
wise,
good.
something wise that I learned from a therapist years ago is that thoughts are very capturable. So in other words, if I think, I could think, um, oh, I'd like to go to Amsterdam. Okay. And that thought, I can have that thought tomorrow. I can have that thought the next day, and it'll be pretty constant, right?
Mhm.
Feelings are very different because the way
Right.
feelings work is that we don't capture them in the same way. So, in other words, if I feel blue today, part of the feeling blue is that it's telling me, well, this has always kind of been the way you feel. This is always
Bingo, Ringo.
right. And
Bingo.
then flip side, the happiness, it'll be like, like I'm happy. I've always really been happy. I don't need to sustain this. This will be sustainable. And both are not true. You go to the top of the mountain and you think like, I see it all. I finally understand everything. I have a good friend years ago who said when he has that experience, he says, I go to the calendar and I write down the words, good day. And when I fall
Yes.
off and I'm down at the pit and I realize that everything is false and it's all an illusion and my life is a sham, I go to the calendar and I write down bad day. That's all it is.
Right. But the thing that's tricky about the the negative. That's why the good day, bad day thing is a very good practice. We need practices. And I do the same thing. Every day I evaluate because I don't believe that can trust my inner critic. And my inner critic rules the day a lot of time, like so when I say things and I get very dramatic and I deal with being a little dramatic here. So I'm watching that. I'm trying to become a more steady person. And if I look and I'm having a bad day, I will say something like, this is just how I feel. And then I look on the list and I see, oh, only 4 days this month I felt badly. I felt bad 4 days. That's not most of the time. And since this screams and our inner guidance whispers, the truth is that underlying all unhappiness, happiness is always there. And I didn't begin the podcast the way I wanted to. Let me just regroup for a second here, and we don't have to stop and change it. But this podcast is about us walking with you on the journey from unhappiness to happiness. That's the purpose of what we're doing here. Because what do I always say? Bringing back some old timey sayings. Happiness can be the booby prize. Knowing how to get back to happiness when you fall off of happiness or fall away from happiness or have a falling out with happiness, that's the prize. So here we go. Like we're talking about, you were talking about abundance and the idea of your thoughts being very different than your feelings. Well, how do we create abundance in our lives is the learning, the learning how to line up our thoughts to match our feelings. That alignment, if we are feeling, if we are thinking good, and that's it, thinking good and feeling good, when that lines up, if we have thinking bad and feeling good or feeling bad, those things are not in alignment, we are pulling in a little abundance, a little negativity, a little, happiness, a little unhappiness. And we stay. That's why our lives don't shift very much. If we can align our thoughts and our feelings, then we have a choice to move and a chance to move towards happiness. And that takes work and it takes tricks. Tricks aren't just for kids. I know, like, we're going to bring back so many references from the 70s that you guys eventually will get it. That was from a cereal commercial. Do you get the idea, though, that like love is always waiting for you? How you align with it, now that's the question. And I have some really kind of interesting and funny things that I use for how and why we get to these places. But finish what you were saying a little bit about this.
Well, yeah, what you outlined, that was the thing is that I would say, so I said love is a choice, and you said love is dot dot dot,
Hmm.
love is full stop, right? I would say the same thing
So
with abundance. I would say that
I agree.
abundance is an aspect of love. And it's the idea of like, because people will say, you will hear people say, like, how do I have more abundance? Or how do I have abundance? And it's like,
Right.
you could already, like, what am I doing with my hands? I'm like, I'm trying to grab at the air to grab more abundance. And it's like, abundance is, you think to yourself, on one way of looking at it, like, if I can just get enough stuff, I will have abundance. If I have a certain amount of money in the bank, if I have a certain amount of friends, I have a person who cares for me, I have children, I have a home, I have like, but then,
And the flaw with that is that those things, everything is dualistic. That is true, but that's not the reason you have abundance. Those are the outcomes of abundance. You have a great person in your life as the outcome of abundance. Abundance is, so what we have to learn to do is, if something is, we have to align with it.
Correct. Tap into it. It's like if I said, for example, like as if I knew someone who said like I'm worried that I'm not going to have enough air. And I said, because when I look
Perfect.
into the world, I look and I say like looks like there's enough air. And they say, well, what about people who suffocate? What about people who choke? What about people who drown? I'm like, and it's like, wow, okay, that's pretty heavy. You're right. Like
But the
that.
thing about that's exactly what you're saying. The thing about using air is the perfect, always my favorite, favorite, favorite analogy. And also another one that works is this. It's like you can't breathe tomorrow's air today.
Yes,
You can't eat tomorrow's lunch today. You abundance is a, the reason abundance is because we don't you can't hoard something that is abundant. Like there's enough love in this universe, but when we go from the theoretical or the to the what we call practical, money in the bank piled up, we think it's that we have to get it, but getting and having are two different things. Getting and having. And when we are trying to get, we are doing the exact opposite of what we need to
correct.
be able to have in our life. Having comes from already knowing, which works backwards to believing. And my wishing, wanting, hoping, knowing, believing, having.
Right. Yes.
And having is manifesting, having is abundance, having is love, having whatever you're wanting to have, whatever you're wanting to manifest, wishing, wanting, hoping, knowing, believing,
Oh my God,
having. So
let's start again.
having,
Hold on one second. Wishing, wanting,
hoping,
hoping, believing,
knowing,
knowing, having.
right? It's six things. And the the reason I break things down is because if we don't break things down, the idea that okay, also this is what people say. So you need to align with abundance. And then they click off the thing and say, now I've told you. And you're like, you've told me something that most people who are in this generation, they know that. They know they're out of alignment. This is 30 years ago that kind of conversation was really important. But what do we do? What
Right.
do we can't align if we don't understand what the doing part of alignment is. Now, I have a few little things. We always go to, first of all, being really, really comfortable knowing, is your inner critic speaking to you? It's pulling you out of alignment. Is your inner guidance speaking to you? It's pulling you to alignment. Now, that's just a beginning step for that. Knowing that you can have, that's a conversation. Because well then, okay, well, how do I know if my inner guidance is speaking, or is it saying kind things to you? How do I know if I'm in alignment with another person? Does it feel good? Is it, if you're having a conversation, well, what if I'm having a conversation and it's really a difficult conversation, but I'm growing from it? Does growing feel good? See what I'm saying? And like, well, what if I'm having a really difficult conversation and like, well, does that difficult conversation give you an ick factor? It's not a productive conversation. Remove yourself. And I call a lot of the things that you're going to love this because we haven't talked about this in a while. All of the things that the inner critic says, the words that I use to describe the inner critic dangling things and trying to change is, I call it warm cookies.
I've
Warm
never heard
cookies.
that. Warm,
Oh,
oh,
really?
warm cookies.
Warm
Warm cookies.
cookies.
Not warm
Okay,
cookies.
so
I was thinking worm cookies. No,
no,
warm cookies.
warm, hot.
Fresh,
Have you
hot out
ever
of the
walked
oven.
into a house? I don't, I mean, chocolate chip cookies that just came out of the oven. You walk in a house and there's like chocolate chip cookies that just came out of the oven. And someone said, and you're on a diet. And someone says, you can just have one warm cookie, right? Your inner critic, you can just have one warm cookie. And your inner guidance is like, you're not going to be able to just have one warm cookie. No one's ever eaten one warm cookie. So what your inner critic offers you is you can have one gossipy, negative conversation with your best bud, and it won't take you down a rabbit hole you don't want to go down. So what I say is like when we see warm cookies, now nothing against warm cookies, guys. Like love your like everybody loves a good warm cookie, but nobody's eating just one. We're just so when negativity is negativity has the ability to use positivity in its negative favor. These are the ways I want to break it down. But positivity, right, will never use negativity against you. Negativity has no problem serving you up a warm cookie when you're on a diet. It's just the way it goes. But warm cookies is a representation of anything that might be harmful to you, but your inner critic gets to control you. This is how we figure out how to get in alignment. Am I leaning towards, no matter what fundamentally it comes down to? I don't like how do I tell the difference if I'm in alignment, if I'm not in alignment? Does something feel fundamental, Tammy, right? Does something feel slightly better, slightly worse, or do you not know? Because no matter and if you don't know, what do we know to do? We pause. I don't know is a real place to be. You pause. If someone says, "Do you want a warm cookie, physical or emotional?" Whatever that is, and you're not sure, you just say, "Give me a minute. Thank you, but give me a minute." And before you take that first warm cookie of negativity,
Yes.
this is the how of alignment. Because what I've been noticing, especially on social media, is so many people with great hearts re re-explaining to people that they need to be in alignment. And then the next question is how?
Right.
And that's what we want to do here.
That's what we want to stay in. I feel like there's a concept of I call it spirituality 102, if that makes sense.
Love it.
So spirituality 101, I feel like that was what was going on in the 60s, 70s, 80s, like when some of these ideas
And they had to fight for that. So they did great.
that was the beginnings. I mean, I'll give an example. There was something I remember hearing this that um, in the early time of Buddhism coming to America,
Mhm.
when on Western mental health was having its own arising, right? And then Buddhism came in, and there was this idea that one needs to detach from oneself. One needs to detach. And the way that some psychologists heard that was that's a prescription for schizophrenia. What you're saying is that the
Mm.
mind should split from the mind. That's what you're proposing is enlightenment or spirituality. And of course, at the time, it wasn't meant that way. It was misinterpreted. And now we would hear those words like if I mean, on almost any conversation, if you two people talking at a cafe and one woman going on and on about her ex-husband, and finally the other woman says, honey, you just need to detach. He's no longer your husband. And then this person was
Yes.
like, yeah, you're right. I do. I just need to let it go. And it's like, there's no recipe for schizophrenia there. There's just like this idea of detachment has gotten into the culture. But then the question becomes, how do we do that? The how is for me is spirituality 102. And that's, I think, what I
Yeah. And I love that. And what I was going to say earlier is that those people with spirituality 101, which was that was a really hard road for them. many people were like, it's having a little bit of a renaissance in a sense, like it's coming, you got to start from start and say those things. But we really are getting a lot of good language in this day and age. Like a year ago, even, I wouldn't have understood the word dysregulation or regulation. And now, I mean, things are moving so much more quickly because when we scroll through Instagram, or when I scroll through Instagram, I see, 4 or 5 people talking about regulating your emotions, which is very helpful for me. I think very helpful for a lot of people. Those words are new words in our culture that happened in sort of spirituality 101 or mental health 101. I mean, really only, was it Carl Rogers that you would say was sort of the person in our generation before, like Freud and Jung and all those people were in the earlier days.
Right. I would say so. I would say it's sort of safe to say before Carl Rogers, there was Freudian psychoanalysis, and then, Jungian and Adlerian and, but, what Freud produced and, and those guys enhanced. And then there was the beginnings of behaviorism, and that what Carl Rogers was doing was saying it's not either of those things. It's something like the locus is something else. And that was huge because
And
most of what you recognize these days as the kind of therapy that like if you go to a therapist, do you expect that you're really going to be lying on a couch? Probably not.
no,
You're going to be talking in a chair, and you might call your therapist by their first name, and it could be a very informal thing, with some boundaries, and but
of
like
course.
that all comes off the Rogers line, really does.
But wasn't his central theme from what you told me was empathy?
It
He
was.
was he was the one who brought empathy into the picture, which now we think of as, well, of course empathy should be in the picture, but that was a brand new idea. Like Freud was not talking about empathy.
No, Freud was like, the therapist should stay way back and almost as, not almost as an impartial observer, like a clinical observer, as if you're observing, like a scientist observing something in a laboratory, where like I don't want to interfere with what's going on. I want to just simply record it. And that's what a therapist should be doing, as opposed to a therapist saying, like, that must have been very hard when your father said that to you. You know,
Right. And I think life
Freud
coaching
would
even
never say
takes it
that.
a step for no, and I think that's where life coaching and therapy, good therapy, like merge, is that life coaching is getting into the more practical, like the great therapists that I know, and I work with great therapists. They're 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 of the new mind, that they don't have to just say, so how do you feel? They do say that, but they can also say, and this is how I feel about how you feel. They're allowed to give, it's an interaction. And out of that, I think coaching was born, where now we take it into the extremes, practical. But even that now is like, with anything practical without empathy as its basis, the cornerstone of empathy is almost, a useless practice, because I've seen it happen with coaches that don't really get that, and where you can, the moment that you don't, that it doesn't come from empathy, people shut down from shame. And
Yeah.
that's where we love our Brene Brown. Like
The shame
she's
specialist.
taught us everything about, like, the idea of shame, and how that immediately, a therapist or a coach can feel like, I had a great session today, and someone could be in a shame spiral and sobbing after a session and never go back, because it wasn't, the cornerstone of it wasn't, I love you and I believe in you and I have empathy for you. And for me, another cornerstone of coaching, which I don't know if I've ever talked about on here. For me, these are just, my rules of thumb. Your mileage may vary. You may be doing something very different. is that, and I also, for me, when I, when I, even when I was a little kid, and we've talked about, like, as- I've always been able to see people fully realized. And what I mean by that is, if they're on a weight loss journey, like I've been, in my brain, I see, like, them fully realized at the weight that they want to be. It's just, if they're a person who's says that they're wrestling with something, for me, the way that once somebody explains to me what their aim is, it automatically shows up to me as a picture of them fully as that person. So for me, I think that part of my job as a coach is, or a good friend, is to hold that vision when they're forgetting it. It's an empathetic, it has empathy in it, but it also has this hopefulness in it. Now that sort of came naturally to me. Wasn't something I had to work on so hard, but I think we can work on when people are wrestling with an issue in their life and they say, I sometimes say, what would you want to say about this a year from now?
That's a good question.
I ask people if, like, for me, a year ago, I sat down and I said, 1 year from today, I would like for people to not think of me as overly dramatic anymore. Full disclosure, like, drama, drama, drama has been around me. And I thought, 1 year from today. And so I use that question, 1 year from today, I would like dot, dot, dot. And it brings people into viewing their future as something that is connected to the now. Does that make sense?
I like that, and you've reminded me of something else. I don't think I'm not sure if I put this in here during any of our sessions, but it's like a wise person once was talking to me about time and said, what is time? I mean, well, what is time is a big question, okay? But on a practical level, like what is time? And I'm like, all right, you tell me, okay, what is time? And he said, time is a conveyor belt that's coming at you. I'm like, okay. He's like, like in a supermarket, if the, conveyor belt of stuff is coming at you, right? That's what time is, because time is the future coming at you, right? And he said,
Right?
so now here's the thing about the future. Here's what the future already contains. It contains bills, it contains problems, it contains
Yes.
heartaches, it contains like getting older, it contains illness, and ultimately it contains death. That so so like
Yeah.
that's
And
reality. It's
thank
like
you, Mark, for telling us
we're
that.
telling
It's
you like
like,
if you as if you didn't know, but here's the thing. So there's a good thing. There's a good thing here.
okay.
So because I'm not okay, I'm a downer and I'm done. Okay, so everyone like feel bad. No, I'm not. It's not what I do. So, and neither was he. He said, okay, so given that you see that that's the way things are, I didn't, yeah, I do see that. Okay. So, what we have the power to do in our lives is with our language, with our commitments, with the structure of people around us who can help us with this, we can create putting things onto the conveyor belt. So it's like next spring, we're going on a nice vacation to Europe. My daughter's wedding is coming up in September. Um,
Ooh, I like
like
this.
we're gonna have a really nice Christmas. We're gonna have a really nice birthday. We're talking like when the kids get a little older, like one more year, we're talking about getting a puppy. We're talking about like so you put all these things, you have all those things that are naturally appearing, and most of them negative. And then you get to put things on it so that when the conveyor
Ooh.
belt comes at you, it's not just downers. It's
This
oh,
is life changing for me. I'm sorry. This is amazing. Like, because I love a good analogy and I love a good visual. Not everybody's is can visualize, and not so some people everybody needs different kinds of stories and visualization. But that conveyor belt coming towards me, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying we can even take, I mean, I got chills from what you just said. I call them God chills. People, it's like you just wait. You're gonna have to get used to me. So when that happens, it means that something was said that's really we want to take note of. I think when I get that, and you're talking about doing a lot of great things, like putting that. I mean, for little kids, putting that puppy in the future that gives, and putting that vacation. And I'm talking about the exact same thing with putting a version of yourself 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year into the future. I usually don't go farther than a year with a real behavior change because I've noticed is that within 1 year, normally within 6 months, if you make a change that you say, I'm putting a stake in the ground, like a year from now, I am not, people are not going to think of me as being dramatic or hysterical, which was this is something, full disclosure, this was something I told I said it to myself and I started behaving that way. And then I started sharing it only with the people in my life that I knew thought I could do it. Shared with you, shared with my close peeps. And then what I encourage my clients to do is like again, it's always, the journey comes from one's own journey, right? We're teaching what we are trying to learn. So I encourage people to continually check in with the people that you've said, I'm, you sort of that's need to you got to brag a little. You got to say, like I mean, a lot, you got to say, haven't I been doing well with not being dramatic? And someone will say, well, wow, you're right. You said you were going to do that. It's been 4 weeks. Good job. And that's the way we would talk to, my favorite analogy from story from Esther Hicks is she said we should be talking to each other the way we would talk to an infant who's learning to walk.
That's
Now,
beautiful.
don't you love this one?
I love that.
Lo-
Yes.
no, because would you ever say to your 1 year old who's learning to walk, as they say, you see them pulling themselves up on the couch, right? And then they fall on their butt. And that you don't sit there and you go, yeah, you stood up, you stood up, you stood up. But you wouldn't say to that infant, you little dummy, you think you're gonna learn to walk that way? Like, oh,
You
just
would
getting up, standing up
never.
on your feet?
You would never.
Never.
Or like, yeah, well, so you stood up for 3 seconds, but that's like so that you think that's a lot.
Yeah, like
Like
that's not
we
a commitment.
we would never. That's not. Yeah, like that's not even. Show me. Come on, show me something. Like you never talk to a child that way,
See, just
right?
that's what I'm saying. Think about the way that we're coached by some of the people in our life that
Some of the people in our life, and then also our inner critic, because we're
inner
the
critic
ones,
is
like,
on it.
like, well, you did, like you did really well on the diet for 3 days, but then you had those, that handful of potato chips, and well, that's just setting you right back. You're never going to do it now. Like rather than just sort of,
Right.
right, like, hey,
But if a little kid walks halfway across the room, like what do we do to get that little baby? It's like two steps, boom, on their, come on, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Come on, two more steps. You can make it from there to here. And they're like, and they keep, and all of a sudden they make it to you, and it's the big celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. You're, it's the first steps. And if we hold on to that concept for the way that how important a goal is that we set for ourselves, whether it's weight loss or whether it's, you know, changing a personality trait that we choose to change. I'm going to be less indulgent in certain things, or I'm going to have less drama. For the people in our life to understand that we need some cheerleading and some celebration. And also say, and this one is common, people who are like, yeah, but you only did it for a month. It's like that person, I would say to that person, and I do say to that person, I am share. I know first of all, I also know I've shared with the wrong person. I've just shared, so that person is crossed off the list of I'm going to tell you my most personal thing. But I also could say to that person, and will say to that person, I've just taken something humiliating to me being overly dramatic, me being hysterical, calling people up like, it's all over. I'm crying. I'm snot crying. And like, I have memories of that, right? My friends have memories of that. I've put that on the table as something I am working on. It's on the table. Are you willing, while you're like, oh, I didn't that great, that wasn't that good. Are you willing to take your most personal private goal and put it on the table next to mine, and then take your own coaching? I don't
Right.
think so.
That's right.
So when we have to be very careful about who we share what we share with. And that's part of, again, regulation and the how-to of abundance. The how-to of abundance is balance, right?
Yeah.
But what do we do? We don't share with everybody anymore.
Right. And when we should, like, I would even say, like, another thing from Brene Brown, who, like,
Love.
she's there all the time. She's good all day long, is
Love her.
the idea that, like, when she's spent a lot of time, like, after the study of shame, she started studying what is it that makes certain people seemingly mostly immune to that, and like what makes people, if you frame it positively, what makes people open-hearted, what makes them able to flourish and deeply involved, able to commit, able to be free, all of these things. What is that? And one of the things she found in research, I mean, a lot of this was research, just observation, was that, talking to people about what they do, what their internal states are, talking to people around them about what their friends are like, she said it's like often these are people who do not put their own self-esteem on the table. It's not on the table for a discussion. So, in other words, if you're coming from the place of like, I really need validation that I'm an okay,
Oh,
I really need,
okay. I get what you're
like
saying.
if you put that out there, that like, I need validation, I need to know that I'm an okay person before I go on, you're going to get some. You will get some validation. You will also get some criticism, and the criticism will cut you to the quick, and it'll knock you down.
So
But
wouldn't you
yeah.
would you say to this question for
Mhm.
you?
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that I do believe we need external validation. We just
We
have to be
absolutely do.
super careful about who we like. No second chances on this. Like if
What?
if I share with someone, is that where she was going with this? Like share with
No,
just people that
slightly different. So, in other words, I think, of course, it would be judiciously putting. In other words, you're talking about, you like to be vulnerable. You're talking about being vulnerable, and she talks about vulnerability too.
correct.
So, of course, you can't be invulnerable and expect that your heart will open, because we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. But it's judicious choosing of where. But it's also, there's a fundamental, like, in making myself vulnerable, like I may say, like, I want to be more of something. And I will be vulnerable in telling you this, okay? But I'm still not putting my self-esteem on the table, which what I mean by that is the fundamental idea that, like, I'm a basically okay person. Like, I have to have that, and that is not something that I would give to someone else to cut down, nor with, if I'm advising friends or especially kids, I wouldn't advise a child to, well, go out into the world with your heart so open that if somebody hurts you, you believe that you're not worthy. Your
So
worthiness is
that
not
is
on the table.
true. So I have a
Right.
question for you
Yeah.
because this is really germane to my life. And you know this. This is going to be, so what I'm talking about is w- before we, before Brene Brown, and I love Brene Brown, we are we are parenting from pot shotting. We're pot shotting as parents. We don't sometimes know. And coming from where we came from, you know, and we've shared some of our history and where we come from, we did, or I did go out into the world feeling exactly that way. Not from there are many people being brought up in trauma. And I'm going to tell like a really hard, like a 2-second harsh story about my father. I don't want to go because but it's true. And it's, and it led us to where a place where you asked me a question sitting on the floor in the living room.
Hmm.
Do you- Okay. So when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was already married, had a child. And I remember going to visit dad at his house. And I don't know if you remember the setup of the house, but the the dining room table, we would look in the screen door on Wall Street, and the screen door would open, and no one else was home. It was just dad. His back was always to me because he sat at that dining room table. And this is where I'm saying that self-esteem can be hurt in ways that we don't know we're doing it. Was frustrating to my dad. And this is what I would hear when I opened the door, and my dad knew it was me. I would open the door and I would see his head do this from the back. Oh,
That's hard. That's a hard
every time
reaction.
I went to go see him.
Oof, that's hard.
Like, here it goes again, I like, oh. Now, I was in my late teens, early 20s, I would say, when that happened. That was now that I'm sure there were many things that came before that, but that is a burned in my memory thing. So, and usually I was going over there excited about something. I mean, we talk about me like as a later adult having more drama, but I sort of was on a scale of super excited about something, or I tended to be when I was younger a super optimistic kind of
Exuberant.
person. Yes, exuberant. So, but that exuberance was very out of alignment with his place in the world at that time. He was very depressed. So, what do you not want to deal with? I didn't even know that my heart was wide open. I and
Mhm.
I didn't register it until years later that that had an effect on me. And where it goes into years later when we talk about self-esteem, I was sitting there one day really upset, and you said, what is it? What are you thinking about?" And I said, "I'm just a terrible person." Do you
Yes.
remember that you asking
I
me this? And
do. I
don't,
remember. Yes. Go on. Yeah.
yeah, and I use the analogy of, you said, like, were you worse than Attila? Are you worse than Attila the Hun? And I was thinking, yeah, like, I'm a terrible person. And I didn't know that if I had had parents who had talked to me differently. So we're not starting at a place like we say to people, this is where I am so passionate about coaching, is that we say to people, don't put your self-esteem on the table. And that's a wise thing. But when you're a little kid, some parent out there is actually saying to a child who's learning to walk, good luck with that. Like, that's actually happening. Like, no, most parents, most people that I know who have children would never do what dad didn't know he was doing. He didn't know.
Right.
He
Yeah.
did it out of his own pain. But that is where, many years of therapy, trauma therapy helped that. So we eventually have to put our self-esteem on the table with someone that's so trustworthy, like a trauma therapist or a great therapist or a great whatever. So it's, again, it's sometimes if you're a healthy, happy, whatever, this is great advice. Don't put your self-esteem on the table. That's great advice from Brene Brown. But what I'm saying is, what if you already have done it?
How do you come
How
back?
do you
How do you come back from
how do
those
you come back from
feelings?
that?
I think that's what she would say. I think she'd say that that would be
You said that to me.
work.
How do you
That would
come
be the
back
work.
from it?
How do you come back from? Look, I mean, like a whole lot of rethinking, a whole lot of reliving, a whole
A
lot of
whole lot of what
therapy.
we're doing right
Right.
here.
Right.
We're saying, okay, now your self-esteem, like, let's clear it up. I feel like I'm all good, like I've been this that happened 40, years ago for me. And I've done a lot of work, but that's what we're talking about. What is once it if you can catch somebody like we're talking about before they've put their self-esteem on the table for someone to crush.
Right.
If we can catch them before that, that's great. But what do you do afterwards? And that's where this works, pulling apart and saying, now my self-esteem, I've got to reboot my self-esteem. And the way to do that is getting in touch with my inner guidance. My inner guidance will give me the love that I need inside of me. Okay, I have a way without leaving the house, without talking to another person, just start listening to something inside of me that loves me.
Yes.
The healing begins.
And and I
Oh,
there's a word that we came up with, you and I, in one of our conversations this week. I can't remember whether it was dysmorphia or dysphoria. They're both kind of in the same ballpark, right? And you may have a
sure.
more clinical way of, you may pick one that you like better, but what do those words mean that like my perception of something is fundamentally off? And you were saying last week that like, sometimes the best news you could possibly have is that you're wrong. It's like if,
Yes.
like you have a dysmorphia issue where no matter how much weight you lose, you think you're fat. You have a dysmorphia issue. You had a dysphoria type of issue where you would have said, despite all evidence, I'm worse than Attila the Hun. I'm worse than Genghis Khan. I'm worse than Jeffrey Dahmer, whatever, because I think I put all the names, I went right up to,
Yeah.
and up to and including Hitler. And you were like, no, I'm worse than him. And I'm like, okay. Like, there's no universe in where, unless you've led a very extraordinary life that I haven't
No.
heard about, there's no way, right? So, like, no, where you belong is in the garden variety. I screwed this up. I was pretty nice that day. No, and then I messed that up. And I was pretty good at
Right.
like
It was
back
a
and forth.
seriously cracked mirror that I was looking
Yeah.
into.
Right.
And the
And that's
thing is
great
that I
news
want
that
people
your
to,
mirror is cracked. It's like you're like, wait a minute,
right,
in that cracked mirror, and you're like, look at how awful my face looks. And right, like that's how it's like. But no, honey, your face doesn't look like that. The mirror looks like that. Let's look again, like turn over here. There's a better
yeah,
mirror over here. Turn over here. Right. Yeah.
right. And the idea that the mirror, that we have something inside of us called our inner guidance. And that is a direct connect with universal intelligence, with any, what you want to call God, you want to call it the unified field, you want to call it higher power, you want to call it your moral compass, you want to call it your gut instinct. All of these phrases, whatever resonates with you is right for you. Remember, we say there's not right or wrong, there's right for you or wrong for you. For me, inner guidance connecting to universal intelligence, the all that is, that loves me, which also takes it all, like the freedom of taking all that negativity off mom and dad and saying, hurt people, and just saying that they are no longer responsible for my happiness, that I didn't, I have loving parents, meaning I have a universe full of love parenting me and sending me through my inner guidance a direct connect of love, and working with that, and maybe a good coach or therapist that who sees my vision. That's a perfect little triangle, right? And but if I was alone in a room someday and I'm having one of those off days, li- you know quieting down and listening to my inner guidance, and then ask asking the universe, talking to the universe as if it has an answer, because it does, and getting that answer back, I can start saying, I can start hearing all the good people, like my loving brother saying, Tammy, that a bit cray cray. You know what I mean? What you're saying. Like,
And
I
I mean
heard
that
it
in the
in my
nicest
ears.
possible way.
Oh, Mark, that conversation, even when I verbalized, like, as bad as Attila. It sounded crazy. It start to sound crazy to me, but I trusted you so much. And I was building my relationship with my inner guidance at the time. And all of a sudden, the little things that got wrapped up with dad and mom and my inner critic and all those things, I could take those. I love dad. I mean, dad did so many great things for us. I mean, he was s- stellar in so many ways.
Right.
So, but your inner critic doesn't look at those stellar things. It looks for, remember that
That
time?
time that he, like the way that people fell short, the way that they promised this and didn't do that, the way that they,
Right.
you can never go to him for that. Like, and it's like, one of the things I love I like, I'll never drive. Remember, I'll never drive you home from the airport, or any of this. Do you remember that between you and me? I love this because when I was living in, you remember this, right?
Oh, I
Yeah.
feel so terrible now. I
No,
feel
no, no,
so
you shouldn't.
mean.
It's like because
I was
it's called having a boundary. It's like I lived when I lived in California, I would come home, like a certain number of times a year. And I would like call you, like often, like dad would sometimes pick me up at the airport, right? Okay, but he would do that. But if he wasn't
sure.
able to do that, you would be my next choice. And it's like, and then as you and I got closer, also, towards the end when dad was a little bit sick, or like,
Yeah.
okay, so and you at one point, I think I asked you a couple of times, but I
Oh,
know you shouldn't feel bad because I
I
know
feel
myself.
terrible
No,
because
no,
I
no, you
know this
shouldn't. And
is
here's
going.
why. And here's why you shouldn't feel bad about this, because I know that I called you up with not really a request. Like it's sort of like, well, see, like, hey, I'm coming home, which you should feel really good about, right? And so therefore you should want to support me in that effort. And so can you pick me up at the airport? And then you would say, like, Mark, I really can't, like, and I'd be like, I'd get all huffy. I'd get all like, well, you say you care about me, and it's like, now I've got all sorts of stuff on it, right? And
Oh,
there was a point, and so I was in the wrong. I wasn't making a request that you were empowered to say no.
I even remember being on the phone and where I was. I'm like, oh gosh, this was such a
And like you feel
conversation.
the horn, like the sort of Damocles over your head, like it's gonna cut. But like at a certain point, you just like you drew a boundary and you said, so Mark, here's the thing. I love you. I can be there for you in all sorts of ways, and I'm never going to drive you back from the airport. I'm not going to drive you to the airport. I'm not going to drive you from the airport. I don't like to drive. I don't like to drive on
That's
the highway,
true.
and I really don't like to drive to Newark Airport. I find it stressful. It's like
I was so
you're
afraid
like
of
and
it.
you're like, I hope that this doesn't mean that you think that I don't love you, because I do. But I'm not going to drive you home from the airport. Okay. So it would be great if you never asked me that question again, because I'm never going to. Okay. And now, if you can get over that, we can then have a great relationship where I do all sorts of things for you out of the love that I have for you. And I'm never going to drive you home from the airport. Very clean conversation on your side. Very clean.
Yeah, I just like those things. Like they didn't have Uber back then either. It wasn't like I could just say, "Oh, just take an Uber," or
And I didn't have money to
something
take an Uber. I mean, if even if there was, I certainly didn't have money in those days. Those were the hungry years. Unlike
over the hungry years.
I
But
wasn't. I was like I
I
was
do
sleeping on a
remember that.
train, right? Sleeping on a train. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a train from the airport almost directly to our house, or directly to, where you were staying at the time. And I just was so, I remember because I mean, it was the first real boundary I ever set. And, and I've learned to set a lot of boundaries since then. But I mean, I felt so awful about doing that. So how this ties in is something else I wanted to talk about. I have had a year or so of having a lot of boundaries and wondering if the and learning that sometimes, like, we can have mistaken thoughts about boundaries as well. Like, I spent a really long time in the past few years sifting and sorting my sort of close circle, you know, and I came up with a notion a number of years ago. which proved to be the wrong notion, which means you could try things on and it can go terribly wrong. I had the idea that if I cut out all the people in my life that were making me unhappy, that I was going to be a happy person. And one of the greatest things that I learned from that was the absence of bad things in your life is not happiness. It can be the beginning of happiness, but happiness is the presence of good things. Now, we need both because we need to displace unhappy things with happy things. But I was under a very wrong assumption a number of years ago that I was just going to take things out. And I seem to have had a life where I have had to learn it the hard way. I have had to like nosedive right into that pit because I'm not sure that's really true. I'm gonna try that myself. I know, like I gotta, and oops, I got out of V8. I mean, like I seem to have to try things on that other people. That's why I love coaching. It's like you don't have to learn completely from your own mistakes. You can learn from other people's mistakes. So there now I listen more and I don't have to test out every theory of mine. But this was one I tested out. Let me get, and there was a point in time when, I wasn't talking to you for a, a moment there, and now I realize that I did what I thought was like, okay, I'm going to create this boundary, and boundaries are great. And the one you're talking about was a good one. I'm still probably not the person driving someone to the airport, just not my thing. But the we creating boundaries can become an obsession as well, and or something that we go too far with,
Well,
in the sense
it's
of,
beyond boundaries and into creating like a fortress that keeps out everybody. And of course,
yes,
there's a lack of balance. Person with no boundaries, person with way too high boundaries that are insurmountable, both problem, right?
yeah, and so I've had to come full circle and sort of make amends and let certain people back in, and and there wasn't it wasn't necessarily that they were going to accept my apology and come back in, but almost everything has come full circle, and that's the amazing thing that I want to talk about. Also, a word I love is resilience. We on this podcast have talked about mom and dad and some of the things that we went through, and one client said to me who watched, was like, I was horrified. Oh my God. I said, yeah, but the point of this, if I'm not being clear here, is that we are incredibly resilient, and we have learned from making some mistakes, but also coming back from, this is the reason I say it, being wrong about yourself, what we were just talking about, or being wrong where you have wronged to somebody, and admitting to that. What that I think creates is resilience. When you
Absolutely.
can say I'm sorry, and ask, not just I'm sorry, but will you accept my apology?
I, you know,
Ask the questions.
I really feel like in the last like maybe 2 years, one of my really, really best teaching moments followed one of my really, really worst teaching moments because um, I was working with a younger student, and I would just like maybe he wasn't paying attention. Well, like it's like, you know, um,
Mhm.
spoiler alert about kids, short attention spans, right? Especially if you're trying to teach them something, right? And they're just like somewhere
Sure.
else. Okay, normal,
Especially math.
especially math of all things, right? So, normal like business day in progress, right? For whatever reason, we have a good relationship usually, but I like for whatever reason, maybe I felt like he was really not paying attention. I tried a couple of times with, come on now, like encourage whatever. And then I just clearly, I don't remember what I said, but I clearly went overboard. And how do I know that? Because I looked at him and he like, he just was like like the quivering lip, and
Oh,
and he's like, "Huh?"
And that's so not you
Like,
either.
and
You're
so,
not like that.
well, I'm, of course,
Oh,
if I was like that, I wouldn't be, teaching kids. I'd be like, don't let me, like monster me,
no,
which I'm not, but, but everyone, like
you're
so,
human.
and I didn't know it until I saw, and then I would immediately, I saw like, and then, so, but for me, the best, I just was like, I just stopped and I said, okay, I really feel bad because I went overboard and I can just see that I didn't do the right thing, and I'm really, really sorry. Can you accept my apology? And he's like, you really feel bad about it. I'm saying, I know, because it wasn't right of me.
Oh,
Nobody has the right to talk to you that way, and I can see the effect it's had on you. And that was just, I really made a mistake, and I really feel bad about it. And I wonder, I hope you can accept my apology. And you know, he was like, yeah, because we have a lot of good stuff behind us. He was like, okay, I'm just really, really sorry. And I won't do that again. And I haven't. But it was just, I felt really good about it because it was, if, I guess when you were talking about resilience and not that you obviously like, the better move is not to have done that in the first place.
right. But we're
And,
human.
but we're human. And having done that, there's something to be said for now potentially our relationship is a little stronger and a little more resilient because I know where the boundary is. Like I won't go, like if I took it up to a 7, next time I'll take it up to a 3.5, right? I won't take it nearly as high,
Right.
right? And then he also knows on his side, I hope that, if I'm a jerk, I'll admit I was a jerk. I'll say I feel bad that I was a jerk, and I will apologize for being a jerk, and I will make an effort not to be a jerk again. That
And
from
there's something also, there's a like especially that's like a very heartwarming situation because rarely do you see a teacher even notice that a kid could be upset. You're so in tune with your students. It's one of my favorite things about your teaching.
I think good teachers. I mean, I remember I had a teacher when I was in my second grade teacher. I adored her. Unfortunately, she after I think after like 5 months, so about halfway through the school year, she really had a very, very bad back problem, and she like ultimately needed to get surgery, and she was out for the rest of the year. And it was so like, but
Oh,
the 5 years that I had of her, shout out to Mrs. Beardsley if you're there. She was
five
I
months.
5 months. Did I say 5 years? Five.
Yeah.
I guess I was 5 years old. Five months. We had 5 months, and she was just so lovely. Um, she first of all, she looked like the teacher in the book, the teacher in the movie. Like
Mhm.
she wore tweed skirts and she had her hair like, sort of done up like it was like the older style of hairstyle. She wasn't like, hair down and whatever. She was not of that generation. She wasn't old, but she was a little older and she had her hair up and she would always wear like a sort of a pearl necklace and she wore these very, very nice, tailored blouses. Oh, and the best part of all was she had this bell on her desk. So whenever the kids got like the second grade, whenever the kids like got into talking to each other and the roar got this way, ding, 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 she would ring the bell on her desk and the voices would come down. So
That's great.
she never had to like shout or talk loud or whatever. It was so orderly and dignified. It was just like everything that children need, just like, order and solidity and like a shelter from the storm, knowing what to expect. She always had the work written on the board. It was just like a model teacher. And it was like really my first classroom teacher experience. So it was great.
Yeah, and the thing that I think ultimately want to get to here with, you know, making mistakes and saying we're sorry, and I really have come to the conclusion, and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but I've noticed in my life that almost until you have some sort of a rift with someone, you don't really have a friendship with them. Do you agree?
I do agree.
There's
I do agree. There's until you have, you just, the only way to know the boundaries, and it could be just as simple as, you know, I say something and like I think of a friend of mine who, we have a great relationship, and like somewhere, I don't know, like, 2 years into the friendship, we're going on like 8, 10 years now. I just said something, he's like, well, Mark, I don't know about that. And it was like clear that in his voice, he was just kind of like not having it. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. Wow, I didn't mean to. That must have come out wrong. And he's like, yeah, a little bit. And I'm like, I didn't mean it that way. It's like, okay, I get that. And but like, whatever I did that poked into him, he let me know it. And then, for a minute, it was like, and then it's like, oh, okay, now we're going to calm down. But I know where the boundaries are a little bit more now, you know?
Also, there's a little grace in there. Like what happens at like I'm talking about from even some much more serious sort of things where, I mean, like I said, you and I went through a period of time where we didn't talk for a little while. And obviously we're talking now.
Okay, now
But I'm saying,
make it up for it.
no, yeah. But my thing was when we got back to speaking, I believe we're stronger.
I agree.
It opened things up. We wanted it so badly that we had some conversations maybe that we never had. We didn't really dissect it too much, but we came back stronger. And that is what, like, if you have a problem with somebody and it immediately like and you can't, you're spiraling out of control and it leaves in a bad way. And when you come back, you can't piece Humpty Dumpty back together again. Sometimes there needs to be a break for, it doesn't have to be forever. And then the road back seems to me to be the thing that two people make a decision when they're away from each other. Wow, either I really miss this person. This person has such huge value to me
Mhm.
that I'm going to do the work to work on this. Or the opposite can happen, and that hasn't happened so far, but could is that you reach out and the other person not interested. It means that, like, did you really have something? Like, when you have something of enormous value in your life, when it's gone, you miss it.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
You miss it, in a way that is sort of, each person has a special spot to fill. And when they're gone, and that's why grief when someone passes is so unbelievably difficult, because in this lifetime they're not coming back, and that hole is needs healing. And that's where we need to be kind to ourselves, to hopefully we have some kind of a belief system that helps us get through it. But if someone's here on this planet and we can't seem to fix it with them, then we can kind of say, okay, this wasn't necessarily a good fit. And that happens. And it's not, but I haven't found yet in 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 my world, there's only been, let's say, that very, very many people that if if they've wanted to come back or I've wanted to come back, that it hasn't worked out a few times. And those things are things that, again, like, you keep people, for me, the measure is to keep people as close or as distant as I can wish them well,
Right. That's
which
that's really good. That's really
which
good.
is another tactic of, like, how do we stay in abundance? Is that abundance is a balance, a frame of mind. Abundance isn't what we have; it's how we feel about what we have. So if someone has wronged us, and we bring, and we want them back in our lives, so we start bringing them closer and closer and closer, and at a certain point we start feeling bad again. There is no out of your life. There's no disconnecting from anybody for good, but you can sort of set them a little farther back in your life, to where it's like, well, I don't see them on a daily basis. I talk to them once or twice a year and I can wish them well. There are people that you say to yourself, I'm not going to talk to them again in this lifetime, and I can wish them well. And then sometimes we bring people that we thought, I can't imagine ever being close to them, but they feel better and better and better. So we're constantly like, when you're talking about abundance and resonance, it's about, you know, the relationship to the distance someone can be to me, or a thing can be to me. If, this pen can be to me, to where if someone is taking this pen and writing on me, I'm not feeling good about this. It does not mean I can't have this pen in my life. It means put the cap on. But when we talk about how to create abundance, abundance means s- closeness or distance to things that make us feel better. It was hard for me to decipher to come up with when something feels slightly better. But sometimes if a person is here, it feels slightly worse. But if they're this far out in my life, meaning we used to talk every day, now we talk once a week, that feels, we're looking for the Goldilocks life. This feels just right.
Yes.
And that's when people say, well, just, create resonance in your life. How? So this is a measurement. Think about like the scale, like a scale. We're constantly trying, if you can think about what you're trying to do to stay regulated is keeping the scales balanced. I'm not I am not dysregulated in a pathologically positive way, and I'm not dysregulated in a pathologically negative way. There's a balance to where I have one eye in the real world. Yeah, I get that.
And
I'm not.
there has to be a sustainability to it. I think that when I
True.
think of it, there is sort of like, there's a, like, in me feeling comfortable, like generally comfortable in this moment, there's going to be like a certain amount of high that I will feel comfortable in, and then a certain amount of low that I will feel comfortable in. And I am evolving. The way I believe it is like there may be this certain like here's the width. Here's like, and I can bob up and down between these two places pretty comfortably between top and bottom. Now, in the long run, that is slowly moving up itself. It is evolving. So even though I may be going like up and down and up and down and up and down in my, within the framework that I'm comfortable with, it's moving up. And so there's this like kind of upward kind of curve, up, down, up, down, up, down, right? Thing
I
going.
think you told me, and I never get forgot the word positive slope.
Yeah,
I love
positive
that.
slope. And it's a positive slope, but it's got a little, it's got
That's it.
jigs and jags to it, right? And it's like it's when if I get to um high, I mean, I can't think of another word for it. It doesn't, it doesn't have to mean like I'm smoking something, right? It just means I get too high. I get to um things are amazing.
Yeah,
That is really hard to sustain. And
exactly.
like, I'm not gonna like beware the crash a little bit. Like, like when I get to the place, like I said, where, my friend would say, like, I understand everything in the universe. I totally get it. It's like, temper that. Go to the calendar and just write good day. I'm having a good day. I'm not the Messiah, and I'm having a good day. Because
Yeah.
tomorrow, like I had shoulder surgery while I was in yeah, so I was in China, I had shoulder surgery, and I was recovering in
Yes.
Thailand, and now I'm in recovering here in Malaysia. Um, Coming out of the surgery, I had, hey, I'm coming off of some drugs too. I mean, like they put you under pretty good, and then they gave me
Sure.
little painkillers to make sure that my shoulder wasn't going to scream, right? And like I remember I was listening to a book and I was going like, oh my God, I totally get it. And I'm not saying that I was wrong. It was leading me in a path of things that matter to me very much and are expanding my view of the world. But at that moment, it was like, I see the path forward from here to, and it's like, but you're coming off some drugs. So, okay, like now, okay, now 5 hours later, okay, now the painkillers have worn off. I just had shoulder surgery. They do
The
a
anesthesia's worn
the
off.
anesthesia's worn off, and also they had done like a nerve block. So if you ever had a nerve block because you had surgery,
No.
your arm is numb. Like you have no feeling. Right. Well, it slowly comes back. And then I was in agony. I mean, I was in some of the worst pain in my life. I was like screaming in the I mean, like I'm not gonna sugarcoat this, screaming in the hospital, like, I want more painkillers. Because they had me, I mean, I had shoulder surgery and they put me in this contraption where my arm was extended. And that was a
Yeah.
bad
Remember.
idea for immediately out of surgery. Bad idea. Like when I took my arm out of it and I was able to sleep. But there was like 45 minutes there of like pain up to like 8, 9, 10, they have the
Wow.
little scale, they have the
And
little
you have
scale
a
on the wall.
really high threshold for pain.
I have a pretty high threshold for pain.
You have a really high threshold. I am the lowest level of threshold for pain.
I've
I'm,
never felt pain like that. I mean, it was just like it was someone like taking a knife and stabbing, repeatedly stabbing
right.
it into my
I've
flesh.
hardly ever seen you take an aspirin. I've hardly ever seen you.
I'll take
I mean,
one,
really,
but
you
yeah,
just, but I'm saying is like
right.
for me, I can tend to be like, you know,
Yeah.
like, I mean, really, I'm not, I don't have a high threshold for pain. I don't claim to, and whatever, but for you, it must have been bad. And also talk about, I love this. I mean, I don't love that you were in pain, but I liked little bring in some of the, do you remember what I told you about the connection when you were in pain? That I had I woke up,
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
we're about, I don't know how many hours apart we were at the time, but
Well,
we
I mean,
figured out
I'm literally 12 hours apart is like as far on the other side of the globe as I can be. I mean, we're both in the northern hemisphere, but pretty darn far,
right.
right?
So you figured out, I think it was for you, that time was like whatever it was, 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something. And for me, I woke up with, which shoulder was it that your was hurting on you? Which
It was
was
my left
I
shoulder. Yeah, my left shoulder.
and I
Right.
remember us talking the day after that experience for you. And I told you that I woke up with agony, agony at 4 o'clock in the morning with my shoulder. And I thought, what did I do? And I got up, I went to the the bathroom, came back in agony, and then a little while later, I thought, did I do something? I moved it, everything felt fine, like I didn't fall out of bed. I was like, and the connectedness, I mean, like I love, quantum entanglement, you just spend time with a person and and become, I mean, I don't know if everybody, your mileage may vary on this, but
You're
I
very medically
tend,
intuitive. You're very
yeah,
medically.
extreme.
I mean, we're closely connected. You're medically intuitive anyway. Like you'll pick up someone will say like, "Oh, I've got, something's going on with my foot," and you'll just instantly know like, "Oh, well, that has to do with something that happened to you when you were 7 or something."
The, this
It'll
was one
just
of those
show up in
things,
your
but
head as like a full-blown answer that you don't even know where it comes
yeah, and I
from.
don't promote it or I don't charge for it. It's not something I don't consider myself like, I'm a life coach. I'm not a paid
Right, but I mean,
psychic.
I will but I will put it out there. Like I think I mentioned that, during COVID 5 years, now it's 5 years ago, right? I was having, right as COVID was beginning, I started
Yeah.
having a, a throat, like I was having really trouble talking. And it was, what was it? Something dysphonia. I can't remember what it's called. Um, but basically a brain thing that causes your throat to not.
Right. And they were worried about being throat cancer
No, no,
and
they weren't. No, I mean, I was worried about those things.
you were worried about that.
No, they
So,
were like, I got it diagnosed, and the doctor said, this is, it's never going to go away. Something dysphonia. I wish I could remember the exact words because it was a legit diagnosis. Went to a specialist. This is not essentially treatable. I mean, it can be managed, but
but
it's
that wasn't true. You
no, well,
could,
that's the whole point is what I'm saying is
oh, okay.
that
Cause I'm going, wait,
no, no,
my,
no,
my
no, no.
bells are going off. I'm like,
No, I'm talking like a normal. So, okay. So what I
okay.
was saying was, um, I was diagnosed with this thing where, the doctor said, this is never going to go away and you're going to have to live with it. And then he said, but it can be, sometimes it can be treated with injections of Botox to the larynx. And I was like,
Oh,
yeah,
I
like
re-
kind of right what you just said. Like, yeah, that was like, it's like that wasn't a no, that was a hell no, right?
yeah,
And again, someone else may have like, oh, I don't find that to be, some people get Botox and so, like, but like I'm just like a little skittish around my throat anyway. So, um,
yeah,
now here's the thing. You said, Mark, this has nothing to do
yeah. I said,
this is not what this doctor said. This witch doctor has, you know, put a like took a rattlesnake and put it in your face, and you can believe that, but it's not the case. It's like
oh,
it has to do with your
that was a hell
separation.
no.
Right. This has to do with your separation from your partner, feeling powerless in the face of a world crisis. We're in the middle of COVID. And when this crisis passes, and it will pass, and you are reunited with the person you care for, this will be a thing of the past. And so it was written, and so it was done because
Do
it
that. I could tell it in a second.
it was
Yeah.
like as the 2 or 3 months leading up to my reuniting with my partner kind of came, it just the throat thing just subsided. And by the time I was seeing him, I was fine. And that's crazy.
Yeah.
But you predicted it, you said it, and I was like,
Oh, it was so obvious. I mean, it was like, I know that sounds funny, but like, these are the things that, I want people to understand that, like, part of everything connects to everything else. Meaning, I can be a little dramatic sometimes. And I am doing great with that, by the way. I think everybody in my life can attest that I'm doing great with that. But over the course of the years, what I realized is your superpower can also be your kryptonite. Like me being super intuitive, I have my best friend will call me and be like, it's a full moon this weekend. Like, good luck with that, because I'm super sensitive to world conditions, taking on things that are like I'll wake up and I'm in a mood. Oh, I can tell the 9/11 story.
yeah, I think you should. And
I don't know. This
yeah,
is
that'll
and
be
this
pretty,
and this is
pretty cool wrap up. Can I preface it though? Because I want to say one, like,
sure.
as I think I did this a couple of weeks ago, I said I have a less kind of weird and impressive story, but I want to put it in because then, right before 9/11, I know that a lot of people who would register as psychic were having all sorts of stuff that summer, And
Everybody was psychic was having stuff that summer.
I have a friend, she's gone now and her mom is gone now, but my friend at the time, I remember over the summer we were talking and she said, Mark, something really big is coming. This is like July, August of 2001. And, she said, my mom is just saying it's going to be huge. It's going to be off the charts. And she's talking about literally, she's getting airplane hangars full of bodies. And I remember thinking at the time, because I was much more skeptical at that time, I remember thinking to myself, well, if you wait long enough, there will be a terrible airplane crash or a terrible, you know, flood or storm or something. There will be something terrible will happen. And then it was only after 9/11 that I remembered the conversation said, like, no, she nailed it. It was, something unprecedented and huge.
And I told you my story way before it happened.
You
So
did.
this,
Right.
which
Yes.
was
Told me
very
the
interesting.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, I've gotten. So anyway, the story goes, I went to sleep one night. It was about September, August. It was just like June, late June-ish. And I went to sleep and I woke up with like full sweats and like sweating and like upset. And I went at the time and I told the person I was with, I was living with, that I just had this terrible dream. It was down to the smallest detail, two planes crashing. It was if like it looked like a dust bowl of things falling, like dust in the air and just
Specifically into the Twin Towers.
into the Twin Towers. I told yes, specific. Oh, I didn't. Yes, two planes crashing specifically. That was it. That was what it was. And in the dream, I remember the visual was so unbelievable because there was just debris falling and chaos and all these other things that were happening. But that was the dream. But
And
in the
I remember,
dream,
I remember there was another piece.
yeah, and in the dream, I was on my way into New York that day. So if there's another piece that you
The other
remember,
piece that I remember was you were listening to the radio and you were
oh,
hearing
that's the
reports go on.
okay. So that actually happened. So that wasn't in the dream. That actually, so
No, that
what
you were
happened?
in the dream, you said that part of the horror of it was you're watching these planes go into the Twin Towers.
No, that was in real.
Oh,
No,
that was in
like
reality.
this is what happened.
Okay,
So
then I'm messing
no,
up
it's
the story.
interesting. It's but you're remembering correctly about most of it. So in the dream, I was on driving into New York while this was happening in the dream. So I didn't work in New York every day, so that wasn't that I would be going to New York every day, but I did occasionally work in New York. I was a decorative painter at the time, and I was on my way into New York with someone I was working with, and I had told this person about the dream, and we were stopped for a really long time. We were stopped at the bridge, like they weren't letting anybody into New York, and we didn't know why. Now, you had the sensibility when this happened. I guess you were working at a full-time job at the time,
Yeah, in an office.
and you went home, but we were stuck in traffic for a really long time. And in the car, it was either I'm not sure in real time how long it was before I said in real time, awake, the person said to me, "This is just like your dream. This is just like your dream." And I was like, because we found out, I guess we turned the radio on or did something. Then we got home and I said, the Pentagon's next in real life time, like, and then whenever that happened, I was like, when that happened. And it was everybody who I know who has even the smallest spidey sense. But this is the kicker of it. The week before this happened, I went to go see mom who had full blown Alzheimer's at there's a special care place that she was staying in. A week before, I walked in and she was like, the planes, they're going to crash the plane. You can't let the planes crash. And she had Alzheimer, or no, she had dementia. So it, everybody was like, Mom, what are you talking about? That it's fine, it's fine. And she was like insistent. She was just kept saying it and saying it.
So
And a week
bizarre.
later,
So
so it
bizarre.
was
Yes.
so many people were picking up on this in the collective consciousness.
You picked up on it. I think you might have forgotten another piece of this too.
Oh, probably, yeah.
So you had gone up to New York, remember? So
Oh
you
yeah.
were doing the forum, right? You were signed up for the
Oh,
forum, right?
you signed me up for it.
Yeah, I signed you up for it. Yeah, like, and I maybe even paid. I don't know. I don't remember if I paid, but whatever.
Probably did.
Who cares? Landmark Education at that time was located in one of the two Twin Towers. You went, you were staying in a hotel nearby, and I'm telling your story, but this is how I remember it. And it's
Tell it.
like you went, it's like it starts on a Friday, so you went in on your Friday, and this is like August of
Yes.
2001, and you got
Oh my
just
gosh.
so sick that you had to leave. You went back to the hotel and you literally spent 24 hours just suffering and recovering in the hotel till you were well enough to come home, but you couldn't enter the building again.
I couldn't go in the building and I couldn't, I couldn't, I mean, I couldn't even leave the hotel. I thought, I'm so violently ill. I can't, I can't even get from New York to New Jersey. And I thought, and I finally did get back to New Jersey. And afterwards, all of it made sense.
Absolutely, of
L-
course.
Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah,
And it's just the reason we talk about sort of these connected psychic events is like your friend having so many people come out and afterwards people say like, oh, maybe they're just making that story up. I told 4 to 5 people about my dream because it unnerved me so much, and all of them came back to me and said, detail for detail, it was exact.
yeah,
And so when I say that people have said to me in my life, well, maybe you're dramatic. And it's like when you're picking up on things that other people have just natural protections for, you know, you're picking up on these things day in and day out. It can affect you when you're feeling like something is going to happen in the world, and it's not that you always know exactly what it's going to be, but you definitely have I definitely have the feeling sometimes, oh, like I'm feeling really off today, and I don't watch the news intentionally, but sometimes I'll say, oh, it's like I'll have someone will be hurt in the public eye and I'll have the exact same pain or some kind of a thing. It's a, you know, as a life coach being intuitive, it's
right.
a superpower.
That's
It's a
right.
great thing. But as a human being, having all
You're
of
like a
this,
you're like a human piece of litmus paper constantly turning blue and purple and not knowing why. That's that,
I,
yeah,
yeah, and I've stopped feeling crazy because, that's the thing is that you look crazy, and feel crazy and yet proven out to be not crazy. And sometimes now if I have a prediction, I'll for myself just to see my own levels of I'll write a date on it, put it in a sealed envelope and I'll just put it aside.
mhm,
And and in general, I have had conversation with God, let's put it, and I have said, you know, I do not want to be, I don't want to know like, especially being medically intuitive, I don't know the bad stuff. You know what I mean? Like I'll take the good stuff, but like a little Chinese wall in between, the good stuff and the bad stuff.
that's right.
But it seeps in, especially if it's not personal.
Right.
Um, I usually the hits I get from the universe are generally the good ones. I had a client who had something going with her eye, and it was
Mm.
you know uh, something she was worried about it being a corn what a
Oh,
torn
retinal detached retina.
detached retina. And instantly when she told me about it, she was really scared to go to the doctor. And instantly I was like, no, it's not that. It's absolutely not that. It's absolutely not that. It's absolutely not that. Like, I was like, no, 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 it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Don't be afraid to go to the doctor. And it wasn't that. But, you know, sometimes you just want to have a sandwich. You
That's
know what I mean?
right.
You want to sit down and just like watch, right now I'm watching The Gilded Age. Sometimes I just want to sit down with some popcorn or whatever and what, and you're getting like these hits on things and wondering why, you're calling up somebody that and you're sort of crying in your popcorn. And so I'm learning how to regulate the life I was given, which is inclusive of this particular skill set.
And it's
There's
wise that a couple of things that strike me here is it's wise that you've had a conversation around it where you've said like, I'm not really wanting that. Like, I don't want to know the negative things, but I will take the information, the positive information, if I
yeah,
can reassure someone, no, 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 don't worry, it's not. Go ahead and go to the doctor, and I think it'll be nothing. The other piece of it that I'm getting to is all of this stuff. So, like, if you have a belief like the universe is a big place, right? The universe is
Very.
basically everything, right? Okay, so the universe is a big place. If you have an overarching belief, and we've come to it from different perspectives and from in different ways, but we've now kind of landed in a place where, and it's been galvanized a little bit of like, okay, the universe is a safe place. It's
Absolutely.
it's ordered, and it is acting on my behalf to help me
Absolutely.
to evolve so that I can more see that. Okay, if you've got all that in place, then this kind of stuff with like, the psychic stuff, playing with that. Um, First of all,
I,
not really trying to prove it. You're not really trying
nah,
to cash in on it. You're not really
nah,
trying to, then you're not thinking like, well, maybe this is the devil. It's like sort of like my
nah.
overarching picture of the universe is a positive place. This is occurring within the universe. So therefore, this is a
Right. It's
positive
a
thing,
no interest of me to make a job out of it.
right?
And I love like watching people that are true psychics. I mean, I just get some, I'm just in the mix of this, but there are people that I am like, you know, truly, some psychics that I watch, I think, here is the driven snow. Just love them. I think one of the younger guys, Tyler Henry, I think that's his name. I think, am
Is
I,
that the guy he did a reading for Oprah, RuPaul? I want to say like
yes, yes, I think that's his
recently I might
name.
have seen those
I,
young guy.
yeah, yeah, it's just a sweetheart. And
Yeah,
it's
I think we're
just,
thinking
it
about the same
reads
person.
true to me. I believe that those people like you, it is not anything that I would use to make money off of because it's not a skill set. Life coaching is my passion. Full stop. That's my passion. So, but I have deep respect for people who have that as their gift and they have to, people got to eat, you know what I mean? You got to, and you're born to give your gifts. And I think that I have incredible admiration for going out and using that. Mine is just here to help my friends and family. If it comes up and I can be helpful, if it's something negative, I usually don't hear it. Occasionally something slips through. And with world events, that's a different thing. But personal to my friends and family, I have actively said protection and in prayer. For me, that's I use the word prayer for communication. You can use the universe, and I've just said not happening for me. Like I don't want to know the bad stuff, just the good stuff. If I can ease somebody's mind with something that's a knowing, bring it on. I'm loving doing that. But this is just the way that we talked about miracles a few weeks ago. And there was one miracle of yours that it just would make warm my heart if you told it. We talked about how I got some amazing jobs through wormholes in the universe that were sort of miraculous. When we talk about the miraculous, we always got to bring this out.
Mhm.
The, the magic wand. Just so this story is so heartwarming to me. Is your story of coming into my first grade classroom and
Oh,
doing
I forgot about that.
it's if we just talked about something so heavy, I would
Right, and
just
this is a
love you
really
to tell.
sweet. This is a super sweet story. Absolutely.
And let me preface it
Mhm.
one more little thing to preface it with. This is why when we told the story a number of weeks ago about how you were sort of pushed ahead to you know, pushed ahead to skip kindergarten and then went back and skipping first grade and then this. And so this is sort of when the universe, you, mom might have pushed you, but she also knew how smart you were and how amazing you were. And this story is so sweet. So
I love
please, 'cause
I love this story.
I love this story.
It's funny because I never really thought of it in this way before, but like I was skipped over first grade, and this is a story about a first grade teacher in the school. She was your
My
first.
first grade teacher.
Right. So her name is Miss Brown. I don't know what when you're a little kid, you don't know that teachers have first names, right? They all have first names and you never find out what they are, right? So her name is Miss Brown. She was lovely. She was absolutely, I thought she was just stunningly beautiful. and super, super sweet and nice. And I know that you liked her. So
Oh, yes.
we would, because she knew you, she knew me, and maybe, I don't know, during a parent teacher conference or whatever, but I remember her saying to me, Mark, I want to have you come into my class and teach a math lesson.
Was she your third grade teacher?
No,
So you were in
so
third grade or
I
you
was
were in
in,
second?
if you were in first grade, I was in third
You
grade.
okay, I want to clarify that you're not an adult here. Okay. You are
No,
in third
I'm a
grade.
child. Right, I'm a child. I'm a third grader, and she's your first grade teacher, you're a first grader, and she's saying this to me. And I remember it registering as like, oh, that's cool. And also a little bit around the edges of, well, adults say all sorts of things that then maybe happen or maybe don't. Like I would, that was my internal little take on that. I was like, okay, like, I'm game, is what I sort of said, or I'll sure, okay, And then I was really surprised when a few weeks later, she comes to my third grade class, pulls me out of class, and walks me down the hall. And as we're walking, she's saying, I want you to teach that math lesson. So now, I remember as we're walking down the hall, she's talking and she's being really nice and talking to me. And I'm pretending to listen because I'm formulating in my head what I'm going to say when I'm in front of your class.
So a few weeks earlier, to clarify, because you didn't say, a few weeks earlier, she had said to you, I might like you to teach a first grade math
A first
lesson.
grade math lesson for my
And you sort
class.
of said,
Oh,
maybe it'll happen."
right, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. And now it is clearly happening, like in real time with no preparation. So we're from the time it takes to leave my classroom to walk with her down the hall, maybe around the corner to her classroom where you would be. I'm I formulate, I'm going to teach two things. I can only remember one of them now. One is the commutative property. And because
Wow.
and I knew at the time, like, well, you guys are first graders, so you haven't learned multiplication, so I have to focus this on addition. So
Wow.
that's what I'm like. And then there was that, and then there was some other thing that I also taught. And I got in the front of class, and I remember there was a couple of kids in class I knew because they were friends of yours. So I called on them, like I knew I could call them by name. They Other kids, I would ask a question, they'd raise their hand, and I'd say you, but I wouldn't know their name. But then
Wow.
I think I might have called on you once. I'm not sure,
I
but
don't know.
it's been a minute, right? It's been a minute since I was in third grade and you were in first. So, but it was a really astounding, um, it was just an astounding moment. It was just because
How long did the lesson last?
I don't know,
About?
like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like
Wow. I mean,
that.
it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's like I, I ended up being a math teacher like that. So kind of pegged that
She had
one.
good instincts.
She had really good instincts. Yeah, and years later, I remember not thinking a lot about it at the time, just like because when you're a kid, everything is new, like literally, like almost everything is a first
Everything.
when you're a kid, first time you see a skunk, first time you see a ladybug, first time they're all firsts. And then like only in retrospect, it was like, that was an extraordinary, like, I don't have any explanation at all for how she decided to do that and that she actually followed through and that I actually
And that you actually
and then I actually
lived
did it.
up to it. You didn't even have to make a little lesson plan. I mean, it's like she didn't ask you to, like, it was amazing. I mean, I just think what a great story about the miraculous when some of the things we've said today have been a little macabre, and I thought this is just such a great positive story.
Place to
And
land.
yeah, and also just like that so many years later, here you are as a math teacher.
And the thing is, again, I want to, and I feel like, we're getting ready to close the show, and I wanted to encourage people at home who are watching that, like, you've got kind of amazing stories like this too, like, which on one hand would seem like, well, that's a small little thing. Like, it's so you went in and you taught 15 minutes in a class. Like, on one hand, you could really, for if it were me, I would be saying I would be downplaying it. But someone else might say, that was a really cool, amazing thing that you
It
did. Don't
was. I'm
downplay it.
saying it.
Don't do that to yourself, right?
Right. And also the thing that I am getting from all of our podcasts is one of the first stories I've ever told was like how I was really connected to something inside of me when from the time I was 2 or 3 years old. And that theme of hearing things a little bit ahead of time and knowing things a little bit ahead of time, that thread is like this beautiful golden thread that runs through my entire life. Teaching has always sort of been a beautiful golden thread that runs through your life. And again, your superpower can be your kryptonite, meaning, you know, you may have been pushed and a little bit hurt by being so smart, and yet celebrated just 2 years later by a teacher who saw it but presented it in a positive way. Teaching has always run through your veins, and that I don't know why I picture a golden thread, you know, thread, closing up a garment or something. It runs through the fabric of who you are. Teaching just does. And for me, it's always been sort of coaching, like, having making, and also for me, really want to land on Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, with some of the stories that I tell, because that is not the takeaway from my life. And that some of the things that seem, that could be taken negatively, that for me it's always been about flipping that pancake from taking something negative and turning it into a positive. And I think the same for you. I think,
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
that is a kind of a good note to sort of, you know, close today. But I just definitely wanted to land on a really kind of joyful, happy
I think that's
story.
a good place. That's really, I would want to leave it there too. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you enjoy watching these, we're going to be doing some things where we pull some segments out and put it on Instagram, and we're going to do some YouTube shorts out of these. But if you stumble across this, if you could like and subscribe to us, that would be amazing, because we hope to keep bringing you, and we're going to be also having guests in the next few weeks. So if anybody out there, might be interested in being a guest, if these topics, it would be about these kinds of topics. We have a number of people that are already on the list and ready to go. So I'm going to kind of end there and say thank you for coming with us to the beyond, or beyond, dot, dot, dot. Have a great week, Mark.
Tammy, thank you so much. You too.
Bye bye now.